Hey, it's me, the guy who said Sonic Forces wasn't a bad game. Do you know what else isn't a bad game? Sonic Unleashed. So welcome to Stuff We Play, home of everything weird and retro, and if that sounds cool to you, why not subscribe? And today we're taking a look at, of course, Sonic Unleashed. And by we, of course, I mean you, me, and Honest Biggums here.
Hey folks, my name is Honest Biggums, and I want to give a big thank you to Stuff We Play for having me on board for this episode. I appreciate it, man.
No problem, dude. Thanks for coming on. So the game we're looking at today is a weird one. It's by far the biggest Sonic game, in scope anyways, to have been released in the past 15 years. Really right up there in terms of scope with the likes of Sonic Boom on Wii U and of course Sonic 06. Ugh.
You mean The Accident? You know, that game that was released on the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3 that I refuse to call by name? It's just called The Accident, and we don't talk about it.
You know what? As Sonic 06 is by far the worst game I've ever played, I can definitely agree with that name. As for Sonic Boom on Wii U, I did an entire documentary on that game's development in which I actually interviewed some of those involved, and now I can't stand the look of that game without feeling horribly depressed.
As for Unleashed, this is the first game that was released after the debacle that is known as The Accident, and for many people, this was Sonic's return to greatness. But, on the flip side, for many others, this was just another crappy Sonic game. Me personally, I kind of find myself somewhere in the middle.
The surprising thing about Sonic Unleashed is just how many different versions of it there are. Upon release in 2008, the game had versions released for the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, Nintendo Wii, PlayStation 2, and even mobile phones. However, if we're going to be accurate here, the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 release of Sonic Unleashed were the true versions of the game, since those are developed by Sonic Team, while the Wii and PS2 versions were mostly different games handled by Dimps, who were the same folks behind the Sonic Advance and Sonic Rush games. As for the mobile version of the game, that's an atrocity best saved for another time. We're focusing on the Xbox 360 and PS3 versions here today, while over on his channel, we went and took a look at the PS2 and Wii version of the game, which, for my own sake, I request to only have referred to as Sonic Unleashed. Now, for today's video, I was originally going to be looking at this PS3 copy of the game. However, I bought an Xbox One S a few weeks ago, and Sonic Unleashed is available to download from Microsoft's online store for $15 Canadian, so yeah, that's the version I played here.
So I think it's pretty easy to see why Sonic Unleashed is such a polarizing title. I mean, yeah, we have Sonic who has fast and frantic gameplay, but then we have like a Werehog thing, and the gameplay was changed up yet again. I'm sorry, this game didn't exactly leave a lasting first impression on me. Like most people after they played The Accident, I'm sure we all lost faith in this, and Sonic Unleashed didn't exactly help me in that regard. In fact, I wouldn't have even played it had a roommate that I had back in the day not purchased the game for me. And honestly, why he bought it for me, I don't even know. I only knew him for like 2 weeks. And after I played it, I was just like, this is okay, and even playing it now, I still feel the exact same way.
As for me, well, I'd originally skipped Sonic Unleashed at launch. I had gotten Sonic 06 a few years prior, and that game repulsed me so much that I ended up ditching the entire Sonic series for a few years. But then around 2011 or so, I picked Sonic Unleashed up, and it was honestly the game that made me rediscover my love of Sonic. I pre-ordered Sonic Generations, went back and played Sonic Colors, and in the process got so sidetracked I didn't actually go back and beat Sonic Unleashed until a few years later. So I clearly enjoyed Sonic Unleashed. I didn't mind the controversial Werehog stages, though we'll get into why in just a bit, and I felt like the boost formula was a great addition to the Sonic series. I really love this.
But is Sonic Unleashed a good game? Or honestly, was it ever good? Let's find out.
The first thing we're greeted with upon starting this game is an opening cutscene in space with Sonic fighting against the forces of the evil Dr. Eggman. And honestly, even in 2019, this looks breathtaking. Sure, it's a pre-rendered cutscene, but even once we get into the gameplay itself, there's not much that looks quite dated here. Honestly, it's like they were apologizing for 06's mediocrity by really pumping this game's look with love and care.
There you go, talking about The Accident again. Anyways, as far as the story goes, Sonic is fighting Dr. Eggman in space and has all 7 Chaos Emeralds collected. Eggman's fleet is massive and powerful, but is powerless against the might of Super Sonic. Thus, Sonic transforms and it looks like Eggman is about to surrender, but then, literally at the push of a button, Sonic gets trapped. The Chaos Emeralds have their power sucked away, and the planet gets blown into 7 pieces, and the terrifying kaiju monster known as Dark Gaia is unleashed. Get it?
Oh gosh. But anyways, in the process of literally blowing the world apart, Sonic gets turned into the feral-looking Werehog. Though, shouldn't that technically be a hedgewolf? I mean, it doesn't sound as good, but like, you know what, screw it, I'm overthinking it. Sonic then gets tossed out of Eggman's ship, where he careens down to the Earth's surface, which somehow is mostly unaffected by the planet being literally blown apart. His fall from several miles high into the atmosphere is cushioned, however, by a flying chickmunk creature thing named Chip, who is both our token amnesiac and our token comic relief character.
He also earns his nickname Chip due to freaking out like a kid in a candy store at the sight of a thing of ice cream. Chip really freaking loves food, especially chocolate, and wait, did he just offer Tails some chocolate? Look, I know that foxes are pretty much close to dogs, and can't consuming chocolate potentially kill dogs? Chip, you sick bastard.
Speaking of food, look at how good all of it looks here. Everything from Dr. Eggman's $5 footlong to some delectable cucumber sandwiches. Gosh, they all just look great here. In fact, after that initial cutscene with Chip freaking out over ice cream, I had to pause and go grab myself some Ben & Jerry's.
So Sonic, who changes between his normal form and the Werehog form depending on the time of day, along with Tails and Chip, set off to the University of Spagonia to meet up with Professor Pickle, a kindly old quirky professor who can apparently help with the whole Dark Gaia thing. Unfortunately, the professor's been kidnapped by Eggman, so it's up to Sonic to head to Missouri to rescue him. And by Missouri, I mean a country that's based off of Central Africa, not the US state of Missouri.
It is then in Missouri that we have our first Eggman encounter in the form of the Egg Beetle, and we rescue the professor, who tells us that we need to find the 7 temples scattered around the world to restore power to the Chaos Emeralds. Thus, we need to go around the world on adventure, smashing robots and the forces of Dark Gaia, experiencing new cultures and locales, figuring out what happened to Chip's memory, and oh, Amy Rose is here for some reason. Like, don't get me wrong, I don't hate her character, and I actually think Unleashed has my favorite version of her, as they've really toned down her manic pixie dream girlness, at least a bit. But then again, she really just doesn't do a lot here.
To be fair, I think the story and characters are a bit more mellow than one would expect from a Sonic game. Sonic is confident but not cocky, and the 90s tid thing really isn't here anymore. He's overall just really likable here, and this treatment makes it feel like Sega really wanted to treat its players like adults with this title, even if it's still very much so content suitable for people of all ages.
Also, can we talk about how this is the game that made Eggman my favorite Sonic character? He seems legitimately evil, but still comically so. They got rid of his disgusting 06 design too, and they gave him a robot companion who would later go on to become Orbot. I think this guy's name is just Ergo or something, but honestly, I could watch his sass send the Mad Doctor into a temper tantrum all day long.
The story takes a bit of a backseat until you get past the 6th temple, which is in the Southeast Asia-inspired nation of Adabat. Despite the dire circumstances facing the world, Unleashed has a very laid-back tone and style. The characters all look cartoony, meaning that even human characters look right at home with Sonic and company. The locations themselves all look somewhat realistic while still being filled with color, and honestly, every single nation here has a personality. It truly feels like you're experiencing a diverse planet filled with different people and cultures, with some people having their own mini subplots. It really does feel like Sonic is going on a world adventure, which is fitting because the game is literally called Sonic World Adventure in some regions.
Because of how much I enjoy these environments, especially with hub worlds that are small enough to be non-intrusive, yet filled enough with content that I find them to be welcome additions, I really didn't mind that the plot just does take a back seat for the majority of the adventure. From right after rescuing Professor Pickle in Missouri, all the way until after Adabat, when Chip regains his memory and remembers that he is like Gaia, the polar opposite of Dark Gaia, who lost his memory due to them both being prematurely awakened by Dr. Eggman, the plot just, well, takes a back seat. And that's fine. The game had its priorities straight. While the plot here is fun and the cutscenes all feel straight out of a well-written Sonic cartoon, it is clear that Sonic Team wanted the bulk of your time to be spent playing the game and not watching it.
Speaking of which, after Adiabad, you go to the final area of the game, Eggmanland. That's right, the hellish amusement park that the Mad Doctor has wanted to build since Sonic Adventure 1 finally got built, and it's literally utter hell to play through. Though the hub world, which by the way you can only access in the post-game, contains robots that are references to past Sonic games. That's a nice touch.
So you go through Eggmanland, fight the mighty Egg Dragoon, which Sonic Team would later rehash for both Sonic Generations and Sonic Forces, and with some help from an ancient Megazord that Chip takes control of, lay the smackdown on Dark Gaia. The seventh piece of the world finally falls back into place. However, as Chip was the Light Gaia, counter to Dark Gaia, he is sealed back along with it. And then Sonic and Tails live happily ever after and fly off into the sunrise. The end.
Honestly, the story here is great, but not obtrusive. All the countries have real life in them, and honestly, they look great too, even at high speed. And speaking of which, can we talk about how great the daytime stages are for Sonic?
Daytime Sonic feels mostly incredible. The boost formula here is great, and it's no surprise that Sonic in this game has been clocked at over 300 miles per hour. Button responses are usually snappy, and I'd say that the levels here are only beaten in style and originality by Sonic Colors, which, now that I think of it, was the last mainline game in the Sonic series to not base the majority of its levels off of previous entries in the series. Seriously, Generations, Lost World, and Forces all felt like attempts to bank on nostalgia with their level tropes, rather than build all new levels with distinctive identities. And I feel that's part of why Colors Unleashed still feels so fresh to me.
As good as daytime Sonic initially feels though, it's not without issue. Sonic is stiff. Please don't laugh. But seriously, it's clear that platforming here was secondary to just going fast, and as such, any points in the game where you do have to platform as daytime Sonic just feel awkward, and make me wish that he had the double jump from Sonic Colors. I mean, if the Werehog can have a double jump here, why can't daytime Sonic?
Another issue I really had were in regards to the actual controls, mainly in regards to the light speed dash, which allows you to trail along a line of rings, and Sonic's homing attack, which, well, lets him home onto and attack different enemies. Instead of being mapped to the jump button like in previous games, the homing attack here is mapped to the boost button. Thus, on more occasions than I can count, I would go to homing attack an enemy and instead veer off into a bottomless pit and lose a life. And as for the light speed dash, I swear that damn thing only works when it wants to.
And speaking of daytime levels, let's go through them. Windmill Island and the nation of Apatos are the first levels of the game, and I mean levels. Most nations have one act followed up by secondary acts, though Apatos has two major acts, but the first is admittedly just a tutorial level. Beautiful, simple, and sweet. It's honestly a great way to start the game.
Missouri definitely continues this trend, though it feels even faster and places more importance on grind rails. With the exception of a couple of awkward jumps, this is another great daytime stage.
And then we get to the icy land of Halaska. This is the sled part, which is a bit annoying at first, but once I got used to it, I really had a great time here. I also think these sections where Sonic boosts across the water are really awesome to look at, even if it's a bit twitchy.
And then we get to Rooftop Run in Spagonia, and honestly, there's a reason this made it into Sonic Generations. It's a fantastic level. Fast, frantic, beautiful. I mean, honestly, though I prefer the music in the Generations version, I like the level design more here. It just feels so fleshed out and fun. I really just love this stage so much.
From here we get to Chanan, which is one of the most visually distinctive levels in the game, and honestly, with how great every single stage looks here, that's truly saying something. It's not without issues though. At points here, the game shows and requires precision platforming, which, with the aforementioned homing attack issue, can be a real pain. It's also here where I noticed how stiff Sonic truly was. The double jump could have really come in handy had it been introduced here.
After that, we get to Shamar, which is a high-speed romp through the desert and another absolutely fantastic stage, and is soon followed by Empire City, which takes everything I loved about Rooftop Run and does it a little differently, a bit more difficultly, and with a lot of New York thrown in for good measure. Honestly, Skyscraper Scamper is just incredible and one of my all-time favorite Sonic zones.
And finally, we get to Adiabad, or we would if not for the most annoying feature in Sonic Unleashed, the medal system. You see, in order to get to each stage, you need a certain number of sun and moon medals. These are scattered throughout the game, and there are 200 of each. To get into Adabat, you need a total of 120 sun medals. Like, what the hell? This goes against everything that Sonic stands for.
And you know what? I agree. I mean, I remember the first time I got to this point, I need some like 20 more sun medals or whatever, which meant I was going to have to go back through a bunch of previous stages to get them, meaning that, in a way, I was going to have to grind in a Sonic game. I was going to have to grind in a Sonic game. This isn't Dragon Quest, come on. There's no reason for these to be here other than to pad out the game. Apparently both these and the Werehog were added in because Sega was worried that the game would be too short otherwise, but you know what? Sonic Colors didn't have either of those, and yeah, it can be beat in a few hours, but damn it, that's a fun few hours.
And speaking of grinding, did you know this game has an upgrade system? You collect these little yellow crystal things from defeating enemies, and then either at the end of the stage or in mid-stage by bringing up the pause menu, you can use them to level some stuff up. This includes Sonic's top speed and boost energy, and a whole slew of stuff for the Werehog. And speaking of the Werehog, let's talk about him. I fucking hate this guy.
Alright, let's be honest, the Werehog's gameplay is pretty much just God of War light. And I think the reason I kind of liked him initially was because, well, the first time I ever played Unleashed was before I ever played God of War. Looking back now though, this guy's gameplay is repetitive, his stages go on too long, and honestly, they just lack enough enemy variety to keep them interesting.
That's not to say the Werehog controls badly either. He has Stretch Armstrong style arms that can grab onto things, and a whole slew of combos that you can use to take down enemies. Plus, his slower speed makes medal hunting rather easy. The biggest issues stem from the fact that by the time you've gotten halfway through the game, you'll have seen every single enemy. Eggman and Dark Guy have thrown everything at you, and to make things worse, the later levels are long as hell. Half-hour long stages have no place in a Sonic game.
That's not to say that the Werehog is completely terrible though. I do see a lot of potential in this character, and rumor has it that instead of the Werehog, these stages were originally supposed to contain Sonic's strong, fisticuffs loving friend Knuckles, who I should mention, in the final game, has 0 appearances whatsoever. As Knuckles stages, these maybe could have worked out great. Though I'd say in general in the final game, the Wii version of Unleashed has the upper hand here, since the HD version of Unleashed's Werehog stage is just, well, why the hell are there 45-minute long stages in a Sonic game?
I couldn't tell you. Going through the Werehog stages in the same way we did the daytime stages, the first stage again is in Windmill Island in Apatos. And though it feels longer than what you'd expect for a Sonic stage, it teaches you everything that you need to know about the Werehog's gameplay, and has some really nice jazz music, until you get into a battle. I think we can both agree that Sonic Unleashed has a great soundtrack.
Oh, absolutely, it's one of the best soundtracks in the entire Sonic series.
But this damn battle theme plays for every single fight with the Werehog, and it's annoying. Like seriously, they couldn't have afforded a couple more tracks to be made, at least make it to where it's not the same track every single battle.
And you know, it's a shame too, since I think this game doesn't even need a Werehog battle theme. These nighttime stages are filled with these delightful jazz compositions that you don't get to hear much of due to the over-prevalence of battles and this annoying ass battle theme. Oh, take it easy, James.
But anyways, Apatos is a fine enough stage, and the Werehog likely wouldn't have gotten on my nerves as much if all of his stages were around this length instead of, 20 to 30 minute long gauntlets.
Missouri's night stage isn't bad either. I like its aesthetic and has some nice puzzles thrown in there. Though, it's here where I first encountered another reoccurring issue in this game. The camera. See, sometimes Sonic Unleashed has a camera that you can freely rotate, and that's great. Other times, however, you can just kind of stiltedly shake it from side to side, and that sucks, and it changes between these camera modes whenever it wants, meaning that in some areas you're locked into a certain camera angle and then have to do some platforming that, due to said camera angle, is jank as hell. It doesn't help either that Sonic only has a drop shadow when he wants to.
These issues persist in Chanan, which also introduces these annoying plants, and Spagonia, though the latter of those two isn't too bad, and actually has a really nice layout to it. It's likely the best of the Werehog stages for what it's worth.
But then we get to Halaska. Oh boy, Halaska sucks ass as the Werehog. Take all of my previous issues with this guy, the jank camera, lack of drop shadows, obnoxious link, and add in some ice physics. So you'll be slipping around everywhere and I just really hate this level. These falling poles are incredibly wonky, ice physics are as annoying as ever, and yes, I know I take these balance beams annoyingly slow, but trust me, I have reason to be wary of them, and shut the hell up, Chip! Just stop it with the tutorials! I mean, gosh, I remember just being the stage for the first time and literally having to take a break because of how pissed off I was from the whole experience.
But if you thought those balance bar sections sucked in Alaska, they come right back in Empire City, except some of them have spikes on them, or they fall, so if you fall off, you're screwed.
But then I only have one major comment about both Shamar's night stage and Adabat's night stage. Wow, these tend to drag on.
Which reminds me, we never actually talked about Adabat Day Stage. I guess we were too busy collecting 120 sun medals and complaining about the awful Werehog gameplay. Anyway, this stage is absolutely gorgeous, an absolute feast for the eyes. But also, there's much going on here that the frame rate just dies sometimes. Sonic's stiff jump means platforming is still a pain, and these water running sections can be a bit unwieldy at times. Overall though, a pretty good final stage. Unfortunately, it's not the final stage.
So before we go on, there's a few things we've omitted so far. There's a couple of sky chase zones, which are pretty much just quick time event gauntlets, and there's some boss fights. The Missouri, Spagonia, and Adabat Day bosses are all variations off the initial Egg Beetle fight, though the final one of those, the Egg Lancer, has some really annoying, finicky wall running sections that are more trouble than they're worth.
As for the Werehog bosses, they're all meh. This one with the boxes is annoying but easy. This one in Alaska is a pain in the ass, and the one in Chinon, wait, is that Ho-Oh?
Finally, we get to the final level of the game, the Crimson Carnival of Eggmanland, and wow, what a hard, yet terrible, yet amazing, yet gut-wrenching, yet tedious, but incredible way to end this game.
That sounds like a roller coaster of emotions there.
Please don't make me remember the actual roller coaster from Eggmanland.
So, Eggmanland. This has a neat gimmick as it actually includes both the daytime and the Werehog gameplay styles, and you switch between them at different intervals throughout the stage. Granted, there are a lot of annoying bits. Sonic's lack of drop shadow makes precise platforming, which is required in some sections, nearly impossible. And as you know, Sega knew about this place since you're always given an extra life right at the end of these sections. That is textbook bad game design, and there's a lot of them. There's also a lot of really finicky sections where you have to grapple with both the homing attack and use the quick time events, another thing which I'm sure was included for no reason other than God of War had them. Also, can we talk about how beating this stage took almost a damn hour?
But you know what? Despite its flaws, Eggmanland is a definition of a menacing, yet memorable final level. It's hellish, it's hard, yes, it's an hour long, but it truly feels like the type of place that someone as brilliant, or brilliantly stupid, as Dr. Eggman would want as his epic evil base. Kudos, Eggman. I'm proud of you. You've been teasing this place since 1999, and I think it was well worth the wait.
Also, thank God you don't have to go through it if you die at the final boss.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, as is, the game already craps itself at the final boss.
First off, we have the Egg Dragoon, who isn't too hard and actually is by far the best of the Werehog bosses. And clearly Sega liked this too, seeing as how many times they brought it back. And I hope you like it, because if you get a game over at any of the numerous forms of the Dark Gaia fight, which trust me, you will at least a few times on your playthrough, you'll have to start back at this guy.
Again, what garbage game design. The Dark Gaia fight is split into 3 main sections. In the first, you take control of Chip and the Gaia Colossus, his Megazord, and rush towards Dark Gaia to lay a QTE-infused beatdown. Unfortunately, it's slow, clunky, and barely works. Interspersed are these Sonic sections in which you need perfect reflexes or, you guessed it, you're dead and back at the Egg Dragoon. Finally, we get to the main Supersonic fight, which is 3/4 ramming into those things on Dark Gaia's shield, and the rest is just more quick time events. Honestly, for years I was saying that the Time Eater from Sonic Generations was the worst final boss in the series, but I really forgot about how absolutely trash this fight was. Like, there's no other way to put it, this is just a badly designed fight. It's just not fun.
I'm just surprised at how much better the Wii version of this fight is than the HD version. In the Wii version, you're literally just playing Punch-Out. It doesn't look as grand, but honestly, I'd take good gameplay over a pretty looking fight any day.
And honestly, I think that's a great way to describe Sonic Unleashed, the HD version in general. This game looks like it should have all the makings of a classic title. Beautiful graphics, a well-written story, characters who are incredibly memorable, such as Professor Pickle, who I shall always remember along with his cucumber sandwich fetish. It's no slouch in the difficulty department either, with the daytime stages being some of the most challenging in the series, and being more than worth playing just for those if you're a diehard Sonic fan.
Or you can play the Unleashed project or similar fan-made Sonic Generation mods for the PC. It's all the fun of Sonic Unleashed with all the tweaks and performance boosts that Generations brings, without any of the BS such as the medal collecting or the Werehog stages.
If you feel compelled to play Sonic Unleashed despite our gripes, you can pretty easily find a copy of it physically on either platform for around $10. However, if you also want to, you can download from Microsoft's online store on the Xbox One for $15. I don't know if this is just me, but the graphics seem a bit crisper on the Xbox One. There seem to be less frame drops in the areas such as Adabat.
Sonic Unleashed is not a very great game, but it is at the very least memorable. It's a much higher step in quality as opposed to the Accidents and even some of the games that came before it, but whether or not I could recommend this to a person, it's a bit of a gray area for me. It's got the boost gameplay that I love, but god damn it, it has that stupid Werehog, so honestly, just let the video speak for itself, and if you want to try it, go for it, but I would still approach with caution.
And I'd agree. Sonic Unleashed, the HD version, has many of the makings of a fantastic game. However, issues such as the obvious padding that is medal collecting, and major issues such as the overly long, boring, and repetitive later Werehog stages hold it back from achieving that greatness. But with that said, Sonic Unleashed is most definitely not a bad game. Just not a particularly great one.
So there we go. Sonic Unleashed. A bad game? No, I don't think so. A classic? Definitely not that either. But is it actually worth your time? Maybe. It kind of just depends on your taste. But I also want to mention that there is an alternative should you be curious on the Wii/PS2, and James and I actually just did a review of that over on my channel. I'm sure you guys can take a second to take a look at that, and who knows, maybe that version's up your alley.
It felt really good to finally look at this game, and I'm glad we could do this together, man. Sonic Unleashed is a game that will always hold a place in my heart, but over a decade after its release, I think it's good that I can look at it without rose-colored glasses tinting my view of it. It's a game that I can see why I loved it, but I can also see its many flaws now. But with that said, if you want to go see our look at the Wii and PS2 versions, definitely check out that video over on Biggums' channel. And as for me, well, I don't know. Maybe I should find a way to play the mobile version.
Oh god, not the mobile version. I feel sorry for you, dude. But anyways, I want to thank you all so much for watching this video, and I want to give a bigger thank you to James for having me on board for this episode. It was a lot of fun putting this together, and I hope that you guys will take a look over at my channel. I do game reviews, top 10s, little let's plays. All around, I just try to have fun with the channel, and I welcome anybody's opinions on, well, really anything. So come on over, and I'll see you guys there.
Again, this review wouldn't have been possible without you, dude. But, as for you, dear viewer, what do you think about Sonic Unleashed? Would you recommend this game? Do you think it's terrible? Have you played the mobile port? Do you know of any way to play the mobile port? Let me know down in the comment section below. And while you're at it, why don't you subscribe to Stuff We Play for more great content like this, or even back us on Patreon, because every dollar earned from Patreon does go back into the channel itself. And speaking of Patreon, I'd like to give a special shout out to our patrons, the Golden Bolt and Justin Chipman, because really and truly, their support means the world. And if you'd like to get your name shouted out at the end of a video, then why not check us out on Patreon. So with that, thank you tons for watching, stay classy, and I'll see you next time.